Good afternoon and namaskar to each one present here. We extend a very warm welcome on behalf of Amity Business School. We thank you to taking out time and joining us virtually for the fifth session of the Mega International Lecture Series, which is envisioned as the curtain raiser to our main event, Global Leadership Research Conference 2022. In this series of international lectures of academic stalwarts, after a stellar opening and four luminary sessions from our academic stalwarts who share their profound knowledge and acumen to enlighten all present. We thank you, Honorable Founder, President Dr. Ashok K. Chauhan sir, Honorable Chancellor, Dr. Atul Chauhan sir, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. Balwinder Shukla ma'am, for giving us the platform to conduct this event. We would like to welcome Professor Dr. Sanjeev Bansal sir, Dean of Faculty of Management Studies and Director of Amity Business School. We request Professor Dr. Anupama Rajesh ma'am, Head of Internationalization Cell and Professor at Amity Business School, to say a few words about the Mega International Lecture Series.
So with all the August gathering, I always like to start this particular session with a Hindi couplet. And it says, and Tom, I'll translate it for you. It says, "Hum akele hi chale the, par dheere dheere karwa saath ho gaya," which translated into English means that we started alone, but very slowly we were followed by a lot of people. I'll put that in context. This whole idea of Mega International Lecture Series was just an idea or kind of a challenge thrown to us by our Dean sir. He called me and a team to his office and said, "I envision that the biggest and the best of academicians should come and talk to our students, not only in our big conferences, which they are a regular part of, but also as part of classrooms, at class of value-added lectures, etc." I kind of went out a little, challenged and a little, frustrated that how will I do it, and kind of in a little bit of a tizzy. But as and when I started usual networking and usual writing, people showed such keen interest with the brand of Amity Business School, brand of Amity University, that now not only am I blogged up all the way up till, so if I could have the next slide, please. So this is a list that we did for this year. And not only am I blogged up till this year, and this of course was envisioned as a curtain raiser to our mega international conference coming up, the 7th Global Leadership Research Conference, but also, next slide please, I'm also booked up till next December. I've had people contacting us as brand Amity Business School, as brand Amity University, and saying we want to be part of this. So we are not done. There are many more lectures coming in. And then of course, at the Mega International Conference. And after that, again, it'll be followed by another round of these lectures. So I won't take too much of time. And I request the compere to please take over. Thank you.
Building on that, today, joining us with the renowned academic, Mr. Tom Lowe, Director at the Center of Student Engagement, University of Winchester. Now, we invite our Honorable Dean of Faculty of Management Studies, Director and Head of Amity Business School, Professor Dr. Sanjeev Bansal sir, to welcome our esteemed guest with the sapling as a token of our culture here at Amity, an expression of our gratitude.
I just wish that Mr. Lowe should be in campus and I should be handing over this plant, or we should be taking an opportunity that he should be doing it for us in our premises. Thank you so very much. Welcome again.
Thank you, sir. Now, I would like to take the opportunity to introduce Ms. Kritika Das Gupta ma'am, Head and Senior General Manager, Corporate Research Center, to introduce our guest.
Good afternoon, Tom, and welcome. I will just introduce Mr. Tom. Mr. Tom is the Head of Student Engagement and Employability, where he leads the university careers, student development, and extracurricular opportunities, staffing, and strategies relating to fostering student success at Winchester. Tom is also the Vice Chair acting for the international network RAISE, which means Researching, Advancing and Inspiring Student Engagement, and the Program Leader for the MA in Student Engagement in Higher Education, working at the cutting edge of student engagement in international higher education. Tom has recently published and co-edited a book, A Handbook for Student Engagement in Higher Education, Theory into Practice, which offers an array of case studies of best practices, sector commentaries, and critical reflections on engaging students in educational developments. Tom is an expert in the practicalities surrounding student engagement in quality assurance, learning and teaching, university governance, and students' unions, as well as student involvement in extracurricular activities and overcoming barriers to student success through inclusive practice. He has an experience working with over 30 higher education institutions from across UK and is a frequent contributor and author in various journals and conferences. Welcome, Tom. It's a pleasure having you with us and learning from you your experiences and strategies which help the students to reach the pinnacle. So we'll be, excited to hear your strategies and your experiences from the other side. Thank you so much.
One more thing, Mr. Tom, just to add what Ms. Kritika has Gupta said about you. This is about Amity, that in the latest time ranking, which was released last week only, we are among the 4 universities of the world where our students have been given we are being given this ranking on the basis of employability of the students. So, and we are among the only 4 universities of India. It has happened
fantastic
last week only by Times Higher Education.
Wonderful.
It's wonderful. Well, thank you, colleagues, and thank you, Dean, and to Anupama and other colleagues for the invite today. It's fantastic to be here to take part in this lecture series. A real honour, really, to be connecting with you in another way from the University of Winchester in the United Kingdom and Amity University in New Delhi. We are delighted to have this connection, and we're really looking forward to doing some more visits both ways. We've spoken in the last 3 months about ourselves visiting yourselves, but we really hope that a delegation of students and staff can come over from Amity so you can see our little patch of land at the University of Winchester as well. Is it okay if I start my talk or any more?
Absolutely. No.
Fantastic.
Over to you. Right.
Well, I don't seem to have the ability to share my screen. Oh, maybe I do actually. Let me just try this again. And can you all see my screen? Let me just double check.
Yes, it's coming. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it is there.
That is great. Let me just quickly get this correct. And well, everybody, it's wonderful to be here and to speak with you to talk about the renewed focus on student engagement and managing communications during COVID-19. I'm going to be speaking from a UK perspective largely during this talk. That's because I haven't been to India before in my life and I can't wait to visit for the first time. But also I'll be speaking mainly about the story of UK higher education during COVID-19 and some lessons learned that we've had during this crisis. Many of the elements that have occurred during the last 2 years have really impacted the ability to come together into one space, whether that's coming together with family, coming together for festivities, coming together for faith reasons, coming together for work, and coming together to learn. And the university as a place that brings people together for the purpose of learning, teaching, and research has, of course, been dramatically impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And therefore, the way that our students are engaged has dramatically changed. And I think we're in a really interesting space right now in international higher education, where we have really seen the benefits of online connectivity. I'm sat in my office 15 minutes from where I live, talking to 280 people all over the subcontinent of India today. And I've got meetings straight after, and I do not have to catch a flight. That's very interesting and very exciting. Anupama, Sanjeev, colleagues, we can connect all the time so easy in this digital age. Yet we may not feel that same amount of connectiveness that we would when we get together with people in the room. So there's exciting innovation that has taken place during COVID-19. However, there's some considerations, I think, some things for us to be mindful of for student engagement and communications. So I've already had a fantastic introduction of myself, but here's me on the screen here. I currently occupy the role of Head of Student Engagement and Employability, and I'm the Director of the Centre for Student Engagement at the University of Winchester. I also program lead a master's, and I'm the Vice Chair of a network for student engagement. But a lot of my reflections and experiences come from being a student myself and trying to keep a high level of empathy, of understanding of the journeys our students are going through during the COVID-19 pandemic, but also the journeys that they are going through from being a digital age, from being Generation Z. And I spent a lot of my student years being a student representative, being a vice chair of our student union, and having conversations about how we together, students and staff and managers, can make universities the very best place they can. I show the picture of the bullet train on the screen of talking about student success in higher education. And I think there's a growing emphasis across the whole world of ensuring that our students are successful in higher education. We all care about this. It's a definition when we talk about student success that we expect that everyone understands and everyone can get behind it. Yet the term student success, when we talk about it, actually to different individuals, it means different things, very similar to the term student engagement. So although success is something that we all care about, something we all get behind, it's still a reasonably amorphous term that means distinctive things to different individuals. But I think the pressure of student success that students place upon themselves, that staff are placed upon by governments in the UK perspective particularly, or tuition fee paying elements of university education, that actually that success can mean different things to different individuals. And the theme of success will run alongside the discussion I'll be having today. I'll be talking about success and I'll be talking about student engagement. And in the UK, we have lots of push factors, reasons why we are being told to look at student engagement and student success. Some of these are summarized on the screen. The top one there is our university regulator in English higher education that is really emphasizing outcomes, that if a student goes to university, they should get a good outcome from that, mainly being graduate employment. We are in a sector in the UK very focused upon the outcomes of higher education and the accountability of the university sector. But actually, I don't disagree in a lot of that, because I have not yet met a student who comes to university who doesn't want some form of outcome for themselves after HE. There's also pull factors as well on the right-hand side. The pull factors are things that we all get behind. Reasons why we all want to talk about student success and student engagement, because we as staff members and universities care about belonging, we care about enhancement, we care about learning, we care about accessibility, we care about student success, of course. So actually, even though we are pushed to look at these things, we still care about them a lot. And I think we care about them more than we're pushed to, actually. But there's a lot going on under this banner of student engagement. And this figure here from Professor Mick Healy and colleagues tries to summarize all the activity going on under student engagement. And it's a very pretty picture. It explains a lot, but actually, really the main conclusion of this image is that so much is going on in this space. We are asked in the UK higher education to ensure all students succeed, no matter their background. If they have the desire and the ability to undertake higher education, they should be supported to access, succeed in, and progress from. But a successful student in the UK, from the government's eyes, is a student who just completes their degree. Now, of course, that is an indicator of success, students completing their degree, but I think there's more to that. I think our students want more than just to complete their degree. They want to succeed during university in loads of different ways, whether that's participating in different societies, attending different talks, making the most of every opportunity, like going abroad, And also they want to succeed in lots of different ways after university. Student success for some students after university, maybe earning millions of pounds, or millions of dollars, or whatever your currency. To some students, student success is being a teacher, a role that maybe not paid a lot of money, or student success is just not having to worry about money anymore. So there's no literature conclusion on student success, but there's lots of themes out there that we can talk about. And if you want to explore the term student success more, I say go to the United States literature. Why do I say go to the United States literature? I say go to the United States literature because their sector marketized first. And by marketized, I mean started charging tuition fees. Now, you'll have heard in the movies, people talk about college dropout a lot. And college dropout was something going on in the 60s, 70s, and 80s in USA, higher education. Students were going to university and then dropping out in the first or second year. Now, if you have a university system which charges tuition fees, that's not good for their business, having students drop out. It's also not good for the students either. So you'll find lots of literature out there talking about the emphasis on student retention, on academic achievement, increasing grades, on non-traditional students attending higher education, depending on what nation of the world that's focused on. There's also other themes in the literature as well, talking about topics such as data analytics. How can we harness data to check our students are engaged? How can we look at extracurricular activities to ensure our students are engaged, or the halls of residence? And there's also a lot of literature out there that talks about the term student success without defining it at all. But what we do know, I think, and I think this is a global definition that we can all get behind, if a student is engaged in their course, if a student is engaged in their educational activities, they are more likely to succeed in their higher education journey. And Professor George Koo from the United States highlights student engagement is a representation of both the time and energy students invest in their degrees. And it's so wonderful that today in this talk we have so many students here present, that we can be talking about that actually you are all engaged students. And if you're engaged in your university experience, you are more likely to be successful. But those students have changed. And often I sit on committees, I visit other universities, and somebody will say, well, when I was a student, it was like this. And absolutely, some of those, what they're saying is valid, but we must recognize that the generation of students coming through today, the traditionally aged students, 18 to 21, have had a very different experience just growing up pre-COVID-19 as Generation Z students. I define Generation Z students as students born in the year 2000, others define that as 1996, but these are a digital Generation Z. The tuition fee Generation Z, students who are paying for their education. Perhaps some of us in the room today got our education far cheaper or for free. The COVID-19 generation they are now, and in some nations around the world, quite an activist generation. Again, we are seeing a resurgence of activism around the world, driven by perhaps Greta Thunberg, certainly Black Lives Matter, and we are seeing students starting to have a say in their future more and more, which I think is just a wonderful thing. So for the purpose of this presentation, I'll be talking about student engagement a lot, as well as student success. And again, student engagement is quite an ambiguous term. It means different things to different individuals, and it can almost be interpreted in multiple ways, highlighted by Bryson and Dunn. Quite traditional definitions of student engagement could be taking notes in the classroom. I can see that student taking notes, so they must be engaged. Paying attention, interacting in discussions, asking questions. These are all quite traditional examples of student engagement that perhaps academic professor staff members would define in the group here today. But we're also seeing the term student engagement, particularly in the UK, possibly in India, in other nations around the world, where actually the term student engagement is widening. It's going outside the classroom to conversations about student surveys, to conversations about student voice, employability, student success, belonging, retention, and getting involved. And student staff liaison committees, that's what SSLCs mean. This is where students and staff come together to have conversations about education. So that creates quite a problem. How do we define student engagement? Well, Vicky Trowler in 2010 conducted a literature review on that term, student engagement, and placed student engagement into 3 areas. One is being behavioral, another being cognitive, and a third being emotional. Behavioral being things we physically do. We visit campus, we attend classes, we click on things. That's also behavioral, data analytics. Cognitive engagement is the learning we do, and emotional engagement is the feelings we get from our university. Alex Buckley from Edinburgh Napier University highlights that student engagement can either be in the curriculum, in the class, or in the university development, in policy. There's also been a great move towards student engagement by quality assurance bodies globally, particularly led by Europe, the European Network for the Quality Assurance Agencies, highlighting that actually student engagement is students getting involved in the approval of university degrees. But Ian Solomonides and Reed in the late noughties actually did some work at Nottingham Trent asking students, what is student engagement to you? What does it mean to be engaged? And actually a lot of students were saying, well, to be engaged is belonging at the university. To be engaged is feeling like I'm transformed. It's feeling like I can be myself. So that slide doesn't necessarily help. Student engagement has lots of definitions. But what do I say about this topic? Well, I say student engagement cannot be defined as one measurable action or one single feeling or emotion. Student engagements or interactions or conversations or feelings are not one type 2, type 3 or type 4. They're more of an A to Z. I view the minimum a student can engage is stepping foot on campus or clicking on the website. And perhaps the maximum is doing a PhD, being the student union president, being a co-teacher, a co-marker, working in partnership with the university, being a maximum engaged student, doing every bit of reading you can. So what do I say in my book, from Mining Yazhela Kim's book from 2020? Well, I recognize the literature says we can define student engagement in any way we want, and that is a strength, but it's also a weakness. But I also highlight that there's a caution that buzzword can become a buzzword. And actually, if it's up to us as the researchers, as the leaders and the academics who are talking about and working on student engagement to be clear of what we're talking about. Because when we talk about student engagement during COVID-19, if we don't define it, that creates risks to our agenda. So my definition is on the start. I say at the top of the screen, I say just be clear from the start. I am talking about student engagement today in regards to reading, student engagement today in regards to attendance, student engagement today in regard to vaccinations. As long as we are clear at the start of a meeting agenda, a research paper, a conversation, we can't go far wrong. So let's look at student engagement during COVID-19. A lot of what the university is based on sits around this definition by Colin Bryson, that staff can engage students and students can engage other students or staff. And a lot of engagement in the university space pre-COVID-19, apart from online digital education, took place like this: face-to-face conversations. What happened during COVID-19? Well, here's a campus we all recognize, a busy, bustling campus. This is Imperial College London. Here's people talking, people on their way to classes, people researching. This is what we view a university like. However, the student engagement changed considerably during COVID-19. First of all, we had to be socially distanced. We had to have 1 meter, maybe 2 meters between us. Actually, most of the time, we weren't in the same room like we are not today. We were in different spaces. And sometimes people didn't even turn their cameras on. And it led a lot of universities to think, we have students now who are far less visible. They're learning online. And we also have students who are locked in their halls. This particularly happened in the UK, or locked in their homes. And it led people to think, well, actually, is the only student engagement we can see is the online footprint, the learner analytics of our students. So let me tell you the history of student engagement during COVID-19 in the United Kingdom. As you know, every country around the world has been a bit different during this time. So this is very contextual to the United Kingdom. And I split it into 5 phases, actually. I talk about it historically. And actually, I've viewed phase 1 being the lockdown crisis in 2020, The summer of 2020, known as phase 2, managing the unknown. Phase 3, the socially distanced university, the pre-vaccinated university. Phase 4, the final straw for UK higher education, which was the second major lockdown, the second wave. And then the socially distant university we live in today. So over 1 year ago, actually, I probably should change this slide to say 18 months ago. What happened in March 2020? Well, there was an international crisis caused by a global pandemic known as COVID-19, and different countries locked down at different times. Our students were told to go home. In the UK, they were told to take 3 weeks of stuff with them because they'll probably come back. And we moved a lot of lectures and contents online. We were able to do some no detriment measures for our students, so being able to put some safety nets because they could no longer access the library, and we were able to refund some rents, and some staff went on a scheme called furlough, which was a government scheme to protect jobs. What were the great positives to this kind of lockdown crisis of March 2020, April 2020? Well, we only had a bit of the academic year to complete. There's a lot of excitement in society, maybe fear excitement, but still excitement, which led to a lot of forgiveness. There were rent rebates, no detriment, and everyone was in the same boat. What were the negatives? Well, we still lost some content. The libraries were closed, belongings were left behind, and some students weren't too happy about the end of their degree. I think this time really showed our campus bubbles. The University of Winchester is a campus university. I know elements of Amity is a campus university. And I wrote a paper on 2019 called The Campus Bubble. And I highlighted that actually, if you're not on campus, you don't have as good a degree for campus-based universities. A student said to me, the best and the worst thing about higher education at the University of Winchester is the campus bubble. If you're on campus, it's amazing, but if you're on campus, you know what you're missing out on. And I think we really saw this during COVID-19 because the campus bubble had to change. The campus bubble had to spread, and actually a lot of students could not take part in that campus bubble anymore. And what is our campus bubble now during COVID-19? Well, sometimes it looks like this in the last 2 years, everybody. Here is one campus bubble, which is a staff member working at home. Some staff members loved working at home. It was quite nice, have a coffee machine, far more accessible to get other things part of your day. Very nice. The campus looked a bit like this, more of a ghost town, not the busy, bustling campus we are used to. And for some students, their campus bubble was a very small halls of residence bedroom, which wasn't necessarily conducive to live in full time. And for some students, this was where they were spending their whole degrees, which I think is really important to remember, everybody, as we talk about going potentially into more socially distant measures right now, that not all our students are living in a gorgeous home. Actually, a lot of our students are living in quite small spaces, which aren't designed to spend long amounts of time in. It's also worth remembering our non-traditional students, and in the UK we are very aware of our non-traditional students whose parents didn't go to university, students who are from a more disadvantaged background. And actually there's a really good paper from 2001 from Sarah Mann which highlights that students who are non-traditional to higher education, whose parents didn't go to university, can enter into university feeling like they're entering into a foreign land. And actually universities are full of little languages, rituals, traditions, structures that are being very alienating to students. Some people are saying that actually that alienation only increased for non-traditional students during COVID-19. And then finally, I want to say, when talking about lockdowns, is our universities are known for their rich engagements. And I've written a paper that's coming out in 2021 on this. The fact that in higher education, when we went through lockdowns, a lot of our rich engagements had to be blocked. Rich engagements for me are those rich conversations you have in the curriculum, those conversations with your peers who sat next to you, with the lecturer informally after class. They're those friends and conversations and social opportunities outside the curriculum, going for coffee, going for a drink. It's residential living, it's social spaces, it's group work, group study when you're not actually sat in the room together, having a joke and a laugh, inspiring different ideas. It's sports teams, it's societies and network groups, it's part-time work, city life and internationalization. These are the life-making experiences that make a university education, and many of these have been blocked by COVID. So the next phase I highlight in my story of UK higher education during COVID-19 is managing the unknown. I label this as the summer 2020. What happened in the United Kingdom? Well, there was a lot of recruitment battles. A lot of universities were fighting over getting as many students as possible. There were some 16-year-old and 18-year-old exams fiascos where grades were calculated by the government, and there were disadvantaged areas of the UK were given lower grades than advantaged areas. The testing wasn't necessarily ready yet, so we couldn't do testing en masse in our institutions, but university was still seen as the safe option. In the UK, we weren't giving any funding to support us during COVID. We were kind of told to suck it up uninformally. What were the positives? Well, the positives of this time was we were able to do some of the greatest online training ever. We moved to where 90% plus of all staff were au fait with using Microsoft Teams. We saw great campus management innovation. I'm sure it was the same at Amity, to socially distance our campuses, to cover them in safety measures to ensure that less people got ill. And actually students still came to university. The negatives were it was impossible to manage students' expectations. We could communicate with students guessing what it would be like, but we wouldn't actually know. Some promises by some universities were made that were undeliverable. Universities ferociously recruited students and battled for students. It was hard for the international student experience because some students couldn't get home or come back to university. And we had an extended academic year. We had lots of extensions, and that led to no April or summer break for staff. So what do I want to highlight here? Well, I want to highlight the tuition fee generation, Ed. And in the UK higher education, our country has had tuition fees for university education for 20 years. We've had £9,000 a year fees for 8 years. And we've had 4 years of rhetoric around the press and the government of value for money. But students are still coming to higher education and university studies in great, great numbers. And perhaps with all of that conversation above going on around tuition fees, students are still coming, but they expect excellent services, world-leading teaching, fantastic mental well-being support, career services, opportunities for placements. But now also they expect remote support and organised services, but still those rich life experiences that had been promised by society. So what's my answer for this? Well, I think we've got to engage students' voices. I think we need to have conversations with our students. How's it going? What do you want to see at your university? I think we can't have a traditional higher education when we're not talking together about student engagement anymore. We've got to come together and have student representation meetings, because actually, if we don't talk to students about their experiences, staff will feel like they're bending over backwards to students' view all the time, as students may become more like customers. But also, if we don't take the steps, students may become activists and campaigners. They may feel that the universities aren't listening to them. So I argue that staff and students have got to meet halfway to talk about some of these big challenges, these big questions we have. What do we keep online? It's a really exciting time, but also quite a scary one. So what happened when I look at phase 3? Phase 3, what I would say pre-vaccination higher education, that autumn time last year, September to January. Well, what happened? Students returned. There was mass outbreaks, particularly in the UK, in student halls of residence. We were only able to do about 1/3 of teaching face-to-face. We did do online services, online teaching. Some universities introduced campus regulations that you could only attend campus twice a week, and that was it. There was tensions between staff and students when students would say, well, I don't want to attend at all. I want to tune online all the time. Student protests began regarding lock-ins, and that happened in particularly at University of Manchester. Students were locked in their halls. And then in the UK, we had a small November lockdown, which didn't do too much, unfortunately. What were the positives? International students attended from around the world still, online. And technology served the gaps in the physical. But there was some negatives. Students began to be dissatisfied over the missold experience. There was little or no government support. Universities' duty of care extended to delivering food packages and things like that. A lot of people got unwell because of COVID-19, and a lot of the part-time employers, the pubs, shops, restaurants were closed during lockdowns, and therefore our students couldn't get as much part-time work. So that's a lot what higher education was like. We were seeing library open hours varying, student time on campuses going down, and we're still seeing that now, more online content. And then we started seeing students start to go home because they didn't feel necessarily safe, and students not wanting to necessarily travel in because who would want to go on the London Underground during COVID-19? And this really didn't go right in the UK. In the UK, we had, not at Winchester actually, but across the UK, there's some big COVID outbreaks, and students saying that they're feeling like they're locked up in their halls and they were missold an experience. I think at this time, I think I want to highlight that we've got some mending to do in the UK higher education, because actually student engagement should lead to belonging, and at the heart of a successful student is belonging, and belonging leads to retention and success. I did a study in 2017 looking at students' sense of belonging at the University of Winchester, expecting it would be all about graduation or living in halls or being involved in extracurricular activities. I actually found during that research study that there was loads of things that led to a student's sense of belonging, that actually all sorts of staff members could lead to a sense of belonging. There's a process of becoming a student, so enrolling, getting your welcome letter, socializing, whether inside or outside the curriculum, yes, housing, but also communal spaces on campus, cafes, and different locations where students could come together, course activities, whether that's trips, whether that's debates in class, passing your first assignment, feeling safe, feeling part of a community, and being encouraged to succeed. All of these things led to a sense of belonging. And it led me to the conclusion that actually all staff have the impact to make students feel like they belong, and so do all activities. But during a time of COVID, all of this has become quite difficult. We've perhaps been rushing. We've been doing things for safety reasons. And now we're in this real question time of what do we keep in the new way and what do we return as soon as possible. Going back to the term student success, I think it's important too to ask our students what their definitions of student success are. There's a really interesting paper by Sarah O'Shea and a colleague from Australia highlighting that actually not all student success is about getting a graduate job. It can be just getting the grades, knowing what they're doing, keeping going despite adversity, personal survival, and actually feeling a sense of happiness and enjoyment and being passionate and feeling proud. And really interesting study asking 163 students for their definitions of success. But the picture of the brick wall is there. And I think that's because COVID-19 has been a bit of a brick wall for some areas of student engagement and success. And it's probably a brick wall that we need to tear down or provide the ropes to climb over during these challenging times. So phase 4 is probably still the kind of pre-vaccination time, but the third major lockdown that we saw in the UK, which was from January to February. I'm sure you may refer to this India as the second wave. This is where we saw a national lockdown occur with very short notice after our Christmas holidays celebration. There was lots of questions over how students could be given more no detriment safety nets. But there were some good things. The government had given us funding to support students. There was mass campus testing now. We opened in March, but there was some student activism. So there were positives. Distance learning was well tried. We had testing for students returning to campus, accommodation refunds and hardship funding, but there were some negatives. There was short notice for that lockdown, mixed refunds. Actually, universities, not all universities could give refunds.
Tom, we seem to not getting your voice, please. Lalit, can you help, please?
1, 2.
Okay, we've got you.
Can you hear me again now?
Yes, yes, we can.
Yes.
I'm so sorry. I'll just continue on the side. Where did you lose me? Oh. Can you still hear me now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good. Well, I'm drawing towards a close. I want to talk about Generation Z, the digital generation. So when we talk about the digital generation Z, we see a lot of people talk about, the Google generation, the fast consumption of information, the instant answers. Yes, of course. We are also seeing in the UK a Netflix generation, students who, if their lectures are recorded, they won't turn up live. And they'll watch them all over a weekend, like a Netflix box set. Some students are even fast forwarding those recordings. I think that's really interesting. The digital generation are far more technology expert, but also Generation Z, no matter if you're a 5-year-old or a 25-year-old, you've all experienced distance learning now. And I think that's really interesting, because I don't know if we've ever been in a time where so many people have tried distance learning. So phase 5 is where we are now, the blended university. It started in September. It's an uncertain road, and we are asking those big questions, what we should keep online and what we should take offline. It's also worth remembering the students that we have now are the COVID-19 generation. They've had far less of a social education experience for the last 2 years. We are seeing in the UK, students increase in mental health challenges due to isolation. Everyone's home setting for education is very different. Some people have their own study. Some people have a table they could work on. Some people don't. Some students were tuning into lectures on a smartphone in the UK, and that's worth thinking of. And some students are eager to return to normal, and some are quite worried about the next step. So we are stuck with these questions, everybody. What do we keep online to ensure student success in 21-22? What should we bring back as soon as possible? Well, I think we're all partners in our student success, and that we should work together with our students. Madeline Powell and colleagues highlight that actually we need to reacclimatize students to higher education, to the face-to-face elements. There may be a greater sense of imposter syndrome, and less sense of belonging. There may be mental health consequences to COVID-19. And it may be harder to find that hidden curriculum. And we've got to account for the inequity of student experience. Whilst, of course, remembering why we are here. And I think, a lot of my talk can be seen as a bit of doom and gloom, but these are important questions, everybody. And we must remember why we are here. The university is the place of knowledge production, of research and learning and student success. It is the place of dreams. We highlight and address universities as a rite of passage, a place where you go to become a graduate and unlock your potential, and to help the world in thriving against university. There's a gorgeous picture of our cathedral and our students graduating from it on the image there. I think we have to listen to our students' voices and pass it on. I think we have to manage and communicate the student experience, and we have to make sure we meet students' expectations if we are promising a certain type of experience. So I'd say remember the student voice. I think it's the missing perspective in our universities often. I think there's multiple pathways our students can feed back, and we want our students, like our staff, to have ownership in the student community. Let's work towards increased student satisfaction, belonging and retention, and a greater staff-student understanding, not just understanding the student experience, but the staff experience as well. And I think where we work together as communities is where everybody wins. Because if we get it wrong, our students will tell us. So it's really important that we listen to our students, because otherwise we will see an activist students body, which we saw in the UK. And I think there's a risk that we could see more student activism in the future. What we want to do is listen to our students first before that occurs. So let's meet and listen to our students. Let's welcome all our students' feedback and expectations. Let's reignite those rich engagements as soon as possible, but always keep flexibility in mind, because I think we're in a time, somebody said recently, COVID could be something we are in for another 3 years, where all plans can be changed at a moment's notice. Thank you so much for inviting me along, colleagues at Amity Business School. I run a Master's in Student Engagement at Winchester, and if anyone wants to talk about this more, please do get in touch. And I would love to have a conversation with you about student engagement. You'd be most welcome on our Masters, but also I'd be more than happy to have a conversation offline. My contact details are here. Please add me on LinkedIn. My Twitter handle is there. and I would love to open for any questions. My slides include all of my references, which I will send across after. So thank you, everyone. That's the end of my talk.
Extremely sorry, ma'am, but you're on mute. Anupama, ma'am, I'm extremely sorry.
It was so wonderful and so enthralling. I actually lived the last 2 years in every single word as if we've lived those words. And I think this is what I always say, that humans behave and feel similarly across the world. I think we also have the Dean joining us. I'm sure he has got something, also his remarks to say, because he's been at the brunt of all these activities. And
it's almost a history moment we've all lived through together.
Absolutely. Every single thing that you said, I was actually reliving the whole last 2 years, and every single word was so true. Tom, I'm absolutely inundated with questions, and I'll ask them as soon, but I'll just wait for the Dean to say his words. And then there are lots of these questions, starting which, how did you handle if there was any student unrest or dissatisfaction? How did the university look at it?
Okay. Yes, yeah, it's a really good question. So I think universities should be open arms to feedback all the time, and to and that goes from the lecturer to the manager. And we should be welcoming of all feedback, because sometimes when we get negative feedback, we put the shield up and say, no, you're wrong, and we argue back, and that can close the door to the feedback. So
absolutely.
We at Winchester, we really have a big ethos of always open to feedback. Even our management team run a student advisory board where they have lunch with students once every 2 months, and to have conversation about how's it going, what are you thinking, and we talk about positive things as well as negative. How could we do this better? What do you like, and what could we do more of? So I think that's the way to get round it. Now, of course, activism can occur, and I think it's recognizing people's, you want to hear people's thoughts right away, and bring people into the dialogue. I think activism occurs when there isn't an opportunity for dialogue. If people feel they're not listened to, then they may choose to grab the banner. But I think it's getting people around the table as soon as possible, and that's really worked at Winchester. If there's ever been a surprise protest, is hearing people out right away. Yes. And explaining sometimes.
Another student asked us that what do you think should be the right mix of communication that should be done with students, so that and between staff and students, so that everybody is happy and satisfied?
Yes.
Is there any ready mix? Yeah.
You've got to get the mix correct, and it's got to be. You will have to use several different outputs of doing that. But very clear on which ones. So it's very difficult in a time of social media, because your official Amity business school social media might be used for also recruiting students. So you don't really want to put out on that saying, come and study at Amity, and then the next tweet saying, we're closed due to COVID. It doesn't look good for business. So I think it's almost working with students to say, we're going to use 1 or 2 different ways to communicate with you, and that's normally email, and being quite consistent in communicating. So we've done weekly updates, and then if there's less to update, you can say in those updates, we're reducing to every 2 weeks now. But also we do a selection of videos as well to communicate those more difficult points, because when you speak on video, you see the whole person, the body language, the tone of voice. You can communicate so much better compared to online through written format. So I think it's where you might have to communicate in a couple of ways, but communicating with staff is just as important, if not more important. Because if students are being told one thing and staff don't know, and they ask in the class, sir, I don't know what's going on, what do you know? And they don't know, that doesn't look good either. They're the front line of your business.
Tom, there's a very interesting question, and this kind of makes me think also. And they are saying that, how concerned are you, or have you changed your mindset about students' academic growth right now? How do you think it has changed over the years? Over the last 1 or 2 years?
I think I can only say it anecdotally. So I think coming together and being exposed to new experiences helps us grow. And that can be studying new areas of content, that can be doing a placement, that can be going out on a trip, learning new physical skills. All of these things are what the university is about. Now, of course, we can do online education. We can, it's an option. But face-to-face has still remained to be the norm. And I think we've really got to think, when we're looking at moving things online, is it just more convenient or is it better for learning? And I think, I use the word seduction. I think we're seduced to do things online because we think, I don't have to get dressed properly today. I don't have to go to work. That's nice. Let's run it online. And our students think that as well. Our students think that too. They wake up in the morning, particularly in the UK, it's raining, and think, I'll turn in online. But is that better for learning? And is that better for growth? I don't think it always is. I think getting people in the room is better for growth. And I think it's important that, and I think therefore some growth has slowed. I think some people are becoming more and more introverted and less social. I found it myself. I went to my first face-to-face meeting 3 months ago, and it was weird. I didn't know how to sit properly because I hadn't been in a face-to-face boardroom meeting for a year and a half.
Yes, absolutely. One very interesting one. I'm loving the questions because they're making me think also. So this is, it is saying that what is so challenging, what is that one thing that which has been developed over the last 1 or 2 years during COVID that you think would be the best thing to carry even if there is no COVID?
I think the best thing that has worked is the one-to-one meeting. So the meeting between the academic and the student, or the advisor, the careers advisor, the student services wellbeing advisor, and the student, and the one-to-one meeting, or me being able to meet with you, Anupama, on the other side of the world. Now, there are still pros and cons to doing a one-to-one meeting online. The cons are they're often shorter, and that worries me because I wouldn't, if I was meeting with you, Anupama, I wouldn't sit face-to-face square onto you like this and look directly at you like this. It's very uncomfortable. You would sit side to side with a coffee or something. So I found that those meetings are shorter than they were before, but the accessibility is amazing. And we were already hearing from students, why would I travel an hour in for a half an hour meeting with my lecturer? That's quite costly to my time, and it's costly to our time. It's also that, and so it's very good for accessibility that we're not asking students to drive in or get a bus in for an hour just to have 1 hour meeting with one person. It's also really good for being in a bit more of a safe space. Particularly students were feeling more and more nervous about going down a dark corridor to see an advisor, but also more nervous about sitting outside waiting to go and see a wellbeing advisor. So I think the one-to-one meeting being online, I think that's likely to remain, actually. There will be a space for some face-to-face, but the one-to-one meeting is such a great innovation, and it enables people to connect from 5 hours away as well, who wouldn't be able to in the past.
One very interesting one that, I see here, and it's from one of our very intelligent students. And it's a longish question, but I'll read out the last bit. It says, do the world needs to recognize that online taught students hold as much as value as an offline taught student?
I think it's a massive question. And I think I saw that saying, is online education the future? I think online education occupied about 5% of the higher education market before COVID. But actually no one had tried it. That's why I make the point that we've all tried it now. 100% of the population has tried it. Just like working at home in the UK, 3% of the workforce worked at home in the UK. The whole office-based workforce has tried it. So now it's really interesting. I think we know if we like it, and we also know if we hate it. and I think the choice is going to grow. So I think more people will want to choose online. I do personally think online, if it's online only, there's an argument that it shouldn't cost as much because you're not getting the facilities. But that debate hasn't happened yet. Universities aren't there yet, but they probably do need to decide and say, come on, like if you're studying an online course at the University of Winchester from New Delhi, are you really getting all the same as a face-to-face student on campus in Winchester who can join the sports teams, who can go to the facilities, go to like, you're not. So, and that's, don't quote me, but so I think there will be a choice, and I think there should be a choice. And actually in United States higher education, there's a bigger choice of higher education. You can go to your local community college, which is very affordable, very cheap. You can go to your local state university, which is a bit more expensive, or you can travel away to a residential Ivy League university, or you can study online. So there's more of a menu. In the UK, there's less of a menu. Most UK students go away to university and live on campus. I think the choice will be greater, that we'll see more students go from 5% to maybe 15%, maybe 20%, who study online. But I think it's got to be argued from a financial thing, not just accessibility. We wouldn't, in business, we wouldn't buy any other product. Like, we wouldn't go on a holiday that was at home for the same price as going on a holiday. Universities are like resorts. We sell the whole experience.
Yes,
if you're not getting those huge portions, surely it's got to be cheaper. And I think the same with working at home as well. We will see a greater, and we are already seeing a greater amount of people working at home. But again, workplaces aren't decided on this yet 100%. Most workplaces have kept the same staff and said, well, this is what we do. There's a bit of at home, bit of work. But then we've still got huge offices that have got blank tables everywhere. So we need to reinvent the workplace. And finally, what I want to say is, if we're doing the hybrid model where you can come online or you can come face-to-face, if we want to entice people to come face-to-face, the face-to-face has got to be truly excellent. People can't come in and then say, it wasn't worth me coming, I'm going to tune in online next time. So it's got to be inspirational, it's got to be active. Why not get students on their feet talking about education? And the same for work as well. So staff, I know staff members in different employers that are driving to work and sitting on Microsoft Teams all day or Zoom all day and driving home. And they're saying, there's no point me driving in because I'm just sat still all day. So we've got to get this right. So some employers are already ahead of the curve, and they make their workplaces more like airport lounges. And, you know, there's free coffee, free food, and then you go to work and it's amazing, you know, and you want to go to work, and it's all about collaboration, and you go to work for your meetings and to meet other people and to network. You do your hard work at home where you just have to write. Maybe we need to think about universities in a similar way. I think it's an exciting future, but the trouble is, a lot of the decisions we have made as a world in the last 2 years have been due to safety. I think now we should make decisions due to community.
Tom, one last question. This looks very interesting to me again. And it says that compared to past years, how much harder or easier is it to form relationships with your new or old students right now?
I would say it's not impossible, but it takes more time. So and similar with staff. So I've formed relationships with colleagues throughout the world during COVID-19, but that's because I've given it a lot of time, and that's because both persons wanted that too. The meeting halfway, I use that analogy again. So I would say it just takes a bit more time because you don't have those informal opportunities, those coffee line opportunities, those chats after class. You don't have those. And people in a bigger session, if that's more than 5 people, whether that's class or at work, tend to talk less. And that happens more and more and more and more. So you don't get to know people in the same way. And the only way you can get around it is giving more time to that and one-to-one meetings.
So, Tom, Dean wants to say something.
I just wanted to say thank you. I mean, it was so enlightening, Dr. Anupama. You know, I just wanted to say him hello and leave the meeting. But the note he started from, I mean, it was so interesting, so continuous. And, you know, Mr. Tom, everything which you said, at the end of the day, as a outcome-based university, as a outcome-based higher education institution, employability and student engagement is the most important criteria.
Absolutely.
And that is what we are all looking forward. So thank you so very much. And I will be requesting Dr. Anupama that just be invite you for our GLRC also, and let's hope, let's pray to Almighty that everything goes well, and you should be in a position, even if not in the in the physical mode, then definitely Dr. Anupama, please make sure that in any capacity where he is comfortable, he should be in the program. Thank you so very much. And as I have told you, it's a beginning, and I look forward for a continued relationship, meaningful and mutual. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sanjeev. It was an absolute honor.
With your permission, we'll formally close the session over to the, and thank you, Tom, informally from my side, but we'll extend that formal thank you from over to the compere, please.
Thank you, ma'am. And on behalf of all present here, I express our deepest gratitude and accolade towards Mr. Tom Lowe for taking out time to be a part of the acclaimed lecture series. We request the audience to join us on 13 January for the similar illuminating session for the Mega International Lecture Series by Dr. Simon Smith, Oxford Brookes University. Amity Business School will organize the 7th Global Leadership Research Conference on Leading into the New Reality, Insights into Action, which will be held on 16 to 18 February 2022. GLRC 2022 is a platform where the management scholars, researchers, academics, and industry experts come together to share their collective experience about the groundbreaking outcomes of their research across the diverse management domain, along with the subsequent contribution to the building of a theory in the field of management. We hope to see you all there. Thank you so much. Have a nice day. And it was a pleasure to have you, sir. It was actually a delight to have you over here.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. And I hope you all have a good rest of the week and a safe rest of the month.
Definitely.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.